Just a couple housekeeping items to get us started. If you have any questions throughout, you'll see the GoToWebinar control panel has a questions section. I'll be monitoring those throughout, so go ahead, type your questions. We'll get to those at the end of the presentation and make sure everyone's questions do get answered. We'll be doing some polls throughout, just a few polls, and we'd love your feedback on those. It helps Ben, Damon, and Bruce really cater this presentation to our audience. So if you guys can let us know what you're doing with those polls, that would be great. And lastly, we've got a case study as a downloadable attachment. So if you're interested in learning more about what Beast can do, and Zadara, that's a great case study. And our inbox and question panel is open for any questions that you have throughout. So thank you for joining us today for Media and Entertainment's next great disruption, moving post-production to the cloud. Today we have Ben Foakes from Base Media Cloud, and Ben has 16 years in the media industry experience. He's worked as an editor, a colorist, producer, post supervisor across a range of media projects before launching Base, and he's the media or managing director over at Base. His colleague, Damon Neale, also at Base Media Cloud, he is the CTO over there, and he's got a great vast of experience too, media technology specialist, broadcast technology consultant, including companies such as Sony and Sky, BBC, and the like. Then we've got Bruce Long from Bebop. He's the CEO over there, and again, a great experience in the media and entertainment industry. So we've got some experts here today talking about, you know, this move to the cloud, how you can make it successful for yourself. My name's Christy. I'm with Zadara. If you have any questions, reach out and we'll make sure we get to them. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Ben.
Thanks very much, Christy, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to just do a bit of a backstory really before we dive into the detail, to talk around what's happened in the industry from our perspective over the last decade or so, and the huge changes that we've seen kind of throughout the content production chain, and really what inspired the launch of platforms like Bebop and managed service providers like Base, and where we think the industry is going to head in the next few years. So the kind of first section is about media industry changing times. Some of these pictures may ring some bells. So we've all kind of worked way back in the kind of more analog era where we were shooting on film and tape, and we've seen the migration through to full digital. And this slide just really epitomizes what we've seen on the production side, from really large, expensive shooting and acquisition formats through to very lightweight, very low cost, quick to procure, quick to provision digital services. And a prime example, it was the move in around 2009 to red 4K shooting instead of full 35mm film. And another really great example, which is quite relevant at the moment, is the move from kind of full-blown helicopter shoots with gyro rigs costing £20,000 for a few hours across to drone rigs that cost just a few £1,000s and are, you know, omnipresent everywhere you go and on all major shoots. So the interesting thing is that camera technologies and acquisition technologies, in our mind, were kind of the first thing to really start pushing the move to full digital file-based workflows. But there's also been a big shift in the way that post-production and the creative side of editing and visual effects has started to shift away from arguably the big expensive facilities, the big hardware-led proprietary stacks, across to more lightweight machines. At my last post house at Sequence, which I ran for about 10 years, we were entirely Apple-based. We used to run Final Cut, After Effects, Premiere, Avid, and we started to make that transition from really expensive equipment to more commodity hardware. But where we think it's going to go is much more revolutionary than that, which we'll get onto shortly. A major shift as well that we've all seen across all different territories of the industry is the shift from tape to file-based delivery, or both acquisition and delivery. And in the UK market, around two and a half years ago, there was the DPP switch over to file-based delivery. This was a real tipping point, and we saw almost overnight a number of customers who traditionally used to store their content on tapes on a shelf, all of a sudden needing to store it securely somewhere, whether it be on-premise or in data centers or in the cloud. So that really kind of teed up our business model in terms of focusing down on how to securely store that content and where to put it. But that then kind of leads me on to the question of what's happening outside of our sector. That was obviously a whistle stop through some of the key points that have happened in the last few years for media, but what other new models are out there and what's been changing more broadly outside of our production industry? So a really good example is music. Is often referred to in terms of the big shift from physical CDs to streaming services such as Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music. And these are obviously consumer facing, but principally, these technologies changed the game from buying a physical item to renting a cloud-based software service. And this is just taking off. You know, it's completely redefined the record industry. Similarly, the move in leisure, in kind of just day-to-day domestic leisure activities, things such as Uber massively revolutionized the way that people travel and pay for moving people around. This is really defined by clever use of apps and making the consumer be able to make their decisions more quickly, more cost effectively, all again powered by cloud technology. And then a very close to home example would be the shift from kind of DVDs and video distribution in a physical sense to content streaming and content distribution, as is often referred to, which is really taking over in our world. And with the launch of things like Netflix and Amazon Prime, not only are they really pushing the boundaries in terms of streaming technology and syndication of content, but also they're defining the way that we actually make shows. So all the way back from delivering 4K deliverables right back through the post-production content and shooting chain, having a really kind of prolific effect on the way that we do things. So really what we want to talk about today is the next logical step. It's where we think things
and
are
Ben, before you get going on the next one, I wanted to just poll the audience quickly. You mentioned a few of the applications and software that you were using. So I wanted to ask the audience what kind of software that they're currently using. You should see a poll on your screen. So what kind of editing software do you currently use? Avid Media Composer, Adobe Premiere, Apple FCP. Just go ahead and click on the poll and let us know what you're currently using so we can get an idea of the audience. It looks like most of the audience is using Avid Media Composer, Ben, just so you're aware. No one's using Adobe in this audience anyway, that's answered, and then a few are using Apple. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. Thank you for letting us know, and Ben, please continue.
Thanks very much, Christy. So yeah, the next logical step is what we want to talk about next, and where we think software as a service and cloud technology is really going to change the game in the world of post-production. But first of all, what is cloud? I mean, this is really quick summary, because a lot of people in the media sector either are dipping their toe into cloud or haven't got a huge amount of experience of it yet. And there is a lot of kind of marketing that goes on about it, but what does it really mean? Well, it is a bit of a fluffy term. It's definitely not this. Really what cloud is about is hyperscale infrastructure that can be shared between lots and lots of users to reduce cost. At its core, it's a utility model for sharing out infrastructure and services. But there's huge benefits to this, and the way that Base and Bebop are kind of presenting the cloud model is more like pay-as-you-go platform services, where everything from ingesting your content, working on your editorial workstations, through to transcoding and delivery can all be operated online, and you can kind of map your budgets against your actual usage. So we're taking cloud and we're kind of wrapping on top of that a service layer to make it relevant to the media market. I don't really want to go into great technical detail today. If anyone has got questions about how things are done, how we store things and how we actually do the streaming side, then please do follow up with us afterwards. But we're going to really dive in now to talk around the inspiration behind Bebop technology and the move to cloud post-production. So I'd like to introduce Bruce Long, who's CEO and founder of Bebop and our business partner in the States. Bruce, could you just kick off by giving the audience a summary of your background and also your inspiration and why you launched Bebop and where you see the industry going in the post-production side of things?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Bebop was really founded. I've been working in production and post-production for several decades. I'm happy to say I've done my share of movies and television shows and YouTube content. And we learned a lot through those processes, how challenging it is to really operate independently. You know, the movement in production has really striated between the large production, the $200 million tentpole, and the guys making television shows, or the folks making television shows and YouTube content, etc. And as this evolved, and I spent years producing it in post-production, I constantly was reminded how certain parts of the production had rights or opportunities the other ones didn't. As an example, many years I had to turn to my editors and say, hey, this is really great. You've done a really great rough cut. Let's get the notes from the director and from the network, and then we'll go ahead and finish the cut and move it along. And then I'd realize that meant they had to sit in that cutting room until 8 or 9 or 10 or however many hours until those notes came back. Bebop is an example of being able to have that editor work on their workstation, go home, get their notes, jump back on their workstation anywhere they are, and do the cut. Because Bebop uses the cloud, it really allows us to support editors to work from home, to work from actually anywhere there's a stable 20 megabit internet line, and to access it on any laptop or PC. So for us, forming Bebop and the first incarnation, which is editorial, was really more about empowering the individual creative. We really believe that the J.J. Abrams of the world that are cutting the trailers or working on his Star Wars movies is every bit as important as the J.J. Abramowitz or the people we don't know and never heard of that are working in areas where they may not have access to some of the equipment. Bebop really gives them the opportunity to access the tools from anywhere, including places where you could not rent an Avid even if you wanted one, or rent an Adobe even if you wanted one. The pipeline is expanding from its start in editorial out into visual effects and different aspects of post-production, and we hope by NAB of this year to be able to provide an end-to-end solution for post-production. So I think the inspiration for sure was empowering the individual creative, and the background I have in post-production and production sort of told me that the time was right. So Dave Benson and myself launched the company a little over a year ago to really support creative individuals.
Great, thank you, Bruce. And let's just talk a bit about the kind of legacy industry workflow in post-production and where your vision is for where it's going to go. So this slide talks about the kind of chaos of multi-territory workflows that we've all been doing for years. We have facilities all over the place, have to exchange content, but the diagram on the left shows once you put it all in one place, you can pull it together and work anywhere. So can you just explain a little bit about this and kind of how you've achieved that?
Sure. You know, for us, and I'll say us in the grand group of production, for us, it's really been challenging as these budgets evolved to keep the efficiencies of production in place and be able to put as much up on that screen as we could. So for those of us in production and post-production, one of the biggest challenges was chasing tax credits, whether it was in Michigan or the UK, whether it was in Morocco or New Mexico. The challenges were the same. You're working in a distant location. Very often you don't have a post-production facility close, and you've got very valuable files that now have to move around. So what we've done is centralize Bebop in global regions. So Bebop has offices in Los Angeles, New York, Vancouver, and London with you guys. And we work hard to make sure that the content process and the work process is really streamlined to allow at least the dailies to get up to the cloud, or we sync to the desktop of the editorial system to make sure that they are constantly mirrored. And the end result of that is you move the files once from camera to cloud, and then finally in the end for delivery. And that streamlining of the work process gives you not only enhanced security, but a lot of flexibility. when you've got nomadic productions, which so much of my life I've spent traveling around the world, which was a great experience, but an exhausting opportunity. The real challenges for those nomadic productions was protecting the files as they moved. So Bebop really does facilitate uploading from the computer, from a hotspot, completely securely up into the cloud. And I think in the long run, we see more and more productions being nomadic. We see the decentralization of Hollywood and the globalization of media and entertainment. And we're very, very much in favor of that. We're very much in favor of making the world a smaller place where people can collaborate really effectively from distant locations. So there's a whole bunch of tools on Bebop that allow you to view other people's sessions over their shoulder or control the security of who's watching a session. And as you probably know, Bebop streams its content, and the files really never move. So we have the ability to stream anywhere in the world. We have that internet connection. So it's been a really great solution, I think, in this global expansion.
The interesting thing about running the actual software and the storage in the cloud, and we kind of had the same vision with Base, and the reason we all partnered up is that from a client's point of view, if you put your important assets, your rushes from your shoot into secure, mirrored, highly available storage, then deploy the applications on top of that, you're effectively getting like disaster recovery, backup, archiving all in one, and the ability to work remotely. And this slide kind of shows, excuse me, the workflow of ingesting content directly into the storage, running the software as a service platform on top of that, and then being able to access it anywhere in the world over connectivity. And connectivity is obviously a broad term. We, in the projects that we've been doing for the last couple of years, we've been predominantly working with clients on domestic broadband, on lease line internet, and those who've got the budgets are using high speed, very low latency, direct connections into the cloud. But you know, the nice thing about these type of cloud solutions is that you can be a freelancer working from home on a, you know, $30 a month broadband contract, or you can be a big enterprise facility with, you know, direct dark fiber into your building. So it really does open up the tool set. The other thing we've noticed is that the array of types of companies that can use these tools is huge, because again, you could be a one-man band or you could be a full film studio, but the tools and the workflows are identical. It's just about scaling it up depending on the use case.
And I think this is a great time for our next poll. The question, I'm going to launch it now, is how many post-production suites or workstations are there in your organization? Do you have 0 to 10, 11 to 100, or over 100? Just to get an idea of the capacity that you folks are dealing with. I think this is a good time to kind of get to know the audience in that case. So let us know, how many post-production suites or workstations are you guys using currently in your organizations? I'll keep the poll open for another 30 seconds or so, but I encourage you to answer so that we can tailor this to you. It's all about you guys today. So looks like most of the audience is under 100 so far, either 0 to 10 or between 11 and 100. Almost split completely at 50-50. Still a couple of people that didn't vote, so I'll keep it open for another couple seconds here. But yeah, it looks like the majority are under 100. So I'll go ahead and close the poll. Thanks for everyone who participated.
That's great. Thank you, Christy. And that's really interesting, because a really good fit for Bebop cloud editing and kind of virtualizing your post suites is where you have a steady state of between 10 to 100 or 0 to 100 in-house workstations. But then when you're very busy and you need to burst capacity, you can just spin up on demand. And a lot of the post houses we're working with in London are challenged by the cost of real estate and equipment and support. And so they don't particularly want to go out and buy loads of new hardware and build out new Avids every 5 minutes. So I think this is a really good fit, and hopefully there's some people on the audience today who will see that that benefit as well. Bruce, this slide is just talking a bit about defining Bebop and explaining what it does in terms of virtualizing workflows and then allowing you to do disaster recovery and visual effects. Do you want to just talk us through this in a bit more detail, please?
Sure. You know, I was going to start out by adding, I'm proud to say I'm a partner in a company called Muse Visual Effects here in Los Angeles. And for us, we have been challenged by not just a large influx of projects globally, which we're grateful for, but also an increase, a very, very large increase in resolution. We're delivering files in 13K and so forth. And so when we talk about bursting, it doesn't just mean the ability to get extra storage, it also means extra processing. And just the ability to throttle up and down inside the cloud has been a huge advantage for us. I know in my years at Technicolor and Deluxe, one of the challenges that we had and one of the opportunities that the large companies provided was load balancing, really the ability to, as you got a denser amount of work in one area, to move it to another area. This is the ultimate load balancing solution without having to move the files. The ability to gather more processing and more storage on a moment's notice, or virtually a moment's notice, is not only a good idea. In the case of post-production, I think it's mandatory. The way we migrate these workflows is really very straightforward. I think many of you, as you do dailies on location for sure, have to send the dailies over a wire, whether it's fiber or some other form, Aspera, etc. You send it back to the post house. You certainly send the proxies to the post house and then some viewing proxies out. And then usually we back up the LTOs. We back up the camera negative to LTOs. So I think one of the things that this really gives you is the ability to ingest into the cloud straight from set, or as close as you can. The Bebop workstation has Aspera built into it, as well as the Bebop uploader. And so you really can get to editorial faster. And when you're dealing with low bandwidth issues, the ability to cut in a low bandwidth area is really valuable. And we've had several scenarios, including some very amazing documentaries that were shot in war zones and in areas that were, shall we say, somewhat vulnerable to having content confiscated, where we had news people shooting in difficult political environments, and they definitely wanted to upload that content and get it off of their laptop and off of their cameras before they went through borders. So we have a tremendous amount of applications for nomadic production that we never expected to see. The security part of it is probably foundational to the solution, because so often when we go to the cloud, we think it's just a simple process of getting it up to the Amazons and the Azures of the world. And security, when you're up there in the public cloud, has got to be a primary concern. So we have gone to great lengths to integrate into our stack the same software and the same PC over IP streaming solution that the CIA uses, and several of the Homeland Security and the other organizations we know so well in the United States and abroad use. So we're really comfortable with security based on the system, and the ability to do it on any laptop or PC, we think probably is tremendously flexible. And those things together, I think, make up the advantage of working on Bebop. The flexibility and the ability to be nomadic but completely secure is a combination that seems like that's kind of what we've needed.
The other thing, just to add to that, Bruce, is you mentioned the kind of suite of tools, and on this slide we talk about the different applications you can run on Bebop. And some of the early projects in cloud post-production were very much driven by specific manufacturers deploying specific tools, and that meant that as a user, as a creative, as a producer, you were kind of locked to one thing. I think where we believe it's all going to go is that creative users just want to choose the tool for the job. They actually don't care where it resides, where it's being streamed from, where the storage is. They just want to use their tools of choice. So being software agnostic in that respect and being able to deploy all sorts of applications into a Bebop pod is a kind of a big unique selling point for Bebop. And we've got some happy customers. So Bruce, we under a lot of NDAs and things, we can't talk about specific company names, but we've got some really interesting slide case studies here. And I don't know if there's any in particular you want to shout out, but we can make the presentation available for download afterwards as well if people are interested.
I think the one anecdote I'll share that's alluded to here, there's the upper left refers to the 42 miles from their house. This gentleman's now a friend of mine, I'm happy to say. The editor that we're quoting here was going to quit his job on a reality show because the commute was about an hour and a half. On a good day, about an hour and a half each way here in Los Angeles. And I'm sure we deal with that in New York and London, all over the world. So for this editor, the company that he works for decided to deploy Bebop on the reality series he was working on, just mainly to allow him to work from home. What they realized when they did that was that the efficiencies allowed everybody to work from home and then to collaborate even when they were at home. So they finished the project, I think, 3 weeks ahead of schedule. And the editor begrudgingly acknowledged that he was able to not only enjoy the process and put his kids to bed and pick them up at school, but he also cut on a Saturday, and he hadn't done that in 19 years. So I think that the takeaway I had from that wasn't just business. It was that the quality of life was increased, was enhanced. And the one thing I've learned in this business, forgive the cliche, is that we don't really respect people's private lives. We don't really respect the boundaries around people's private lives, whether it's the sick day or the maternity leave. And I think this actually begins to break that down. It makes working from home absolutely as effective and secure as working from the office. And it really does take away the need to tether someone to a specific location, whether that's a cutting room or a physical studio. And it still empowers the individual to be their most creative. You know, it always frustrated me when the editorial team had to sit in a cutting room and the DPs could be out on the beach shooting beautiful sets. I love the idea that I've got an editor somewhere sitting with his laptop in his lap, cutting a beautiful scene and still looking over the ocean and having a great life experience. So a lot of these really just allude to the fact that we're trying to bring back a quality of life to the entertainment business, and in doing so, probably get a little better creative result.
I think there's a lot of editors who would very much like to be sat on the beach with their laptops. We're in the middle of doing a test in London at the moment using bonded SIM cards and having editors be able to sit out anywhere in the city and have their laptop and actually stream the content back and work. I mean, it's very early days, but if you think about where connectivity is going over the coming few years ahead, it's going to be very, very interesting. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is the importance of a service appealing to different parts of a business. So Bruce has talked very eloquently about the creative benefits and, you know, being able to work from home and save money and work remotely. It's also appealing for the management teams, you know, the people who actually have to manage facilities and figure out what infrastructure to procure, etc. And I think what's important is that having a platform service that's managed bridges lots of different departments. It's the creatives, it's the management, it's also the finance, and there are a lot of analyst papers out there about the true cost savings of cloud, and it's something which comes up a lot, and there's a lot of kind of controversy, I suppose, at the moment about, is it really cheaper to do stuff in the cloud? I think what's really important is to remember that when you deploy something into the cloud and it's a fully managed service, you actually strip away an awful lot of ancillary costs. So things like technical support and power and cooling and all of the things that often get buried away in budgets. And so what we've found is that firms that are making that move and they're making that commitment are seeing really good returns. And we tend to work with those companies and do all the kind of total cost analysis and forecasting and help them. So if anyone on today is interested in the real benefits financially and doing the comparisons, then do get in touch, because this is what we do day in, day out, and it's our full-time job.
And I'll be sending some of those analyst reports that Ben mentions, along with the recording of the deck. We'll be sending that to you via email so you can review it on your own time, just so you guys know.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic. So we're getting ready to do a live demonstration of the platform so that you guys can actually see what we're talking about, because often these presentations are all very hypothetical, but we're actually going to log in and show you the Bebop platform shortly. So Damon's just preparing that in the background. And whilst he is, I just wanted to talk a bit about the security with Bruce and the fact that I think there's a misconception personally in the industry that cloud is somehow insecure, or it's, you know, it makes it opening up your data for people to grab online and hack into. Our analysis and our knowledge of how things are built shows us that actually the amount of layers of security built into cloud platforms are so much higher than traditional on-premise solutions that actually get huge benefits. Bruce, the PC over IP part, without getting too technical, the streaming part of Bebop is actually used by the military in the US. Do you want to talk a bit around how the security works and why you chose it and why you implemented it in the way that you did?
Sure. PC over IP, just break it down a little bit. PC, the computer, over the IP, over the internet, is a streaming solution, and it's pretty different than Netflix, although to the human eye, it looks like 1080p, like 1080p looks. But the key here is that it's really just sending the difference of pixels on the screen. So if you can imagine me sitting here at my computer and my mouth moving, but the rest of me holding relatively still, the amount of bandwidth that Bebop will use to send that image down the wire is actually very small, because it's actually only sending the difference in pixels as my mouth moves. So the efficiency and within what we call the PC over IP container is also why it's so secure. There is no way to pull a file down through that stream. So even though you've got a very powerful computer in the cloud and it can play back 4K or 2020 color space or HDR or whatever rarefied format or traditional format you're using, it streams it in a way that it can't be stolen, and those files cannot be pulled down to the workstation. We also close off browsing for our most secure configuration. We close off browsing in the cloud, and we pretty much close off browsing on the laptop, so you really have purely a PC over IP container. I should add that we can work with the zero clients many of you have probably seen in different deployments, and certainly the military and the US government use these, what they call zero client. The zero client is nothing but a mouse, a keyboard, a display, and a hockey puck on the back that has our software. So the PC over IP solution is fundamental to what we do, but it's also by far the most powerful remoting software we could get our hands on. So when you do things like editing, which has a tremendous amount of interactivity, or visual effects, audio, etc., as you can imagine, controlling and having real-time controls with zero or no discernible lag is a substantial undertaking. So PC over IP is a really important part of it. We have, I want to say, 7 patents filed within the Bebop stack. I think there are another 4 or 5 coming in the next 12 months. So we've done a lot of proprietary work in the past 2 years to get the software not only incredibly secure, but incredibly powerful. So, from an administrative point of view, my background in production, we always wanted certain people to see it before the studio did, or the studio to see it before the financiers did, or whoever the case. There was always someone that they wanted to shield from certain views of the early versions of content. So the administrative controls of this thing are really well laid out, so you can turn one person on or off, or have multiple people have access, etc. So I think you're going to see, when you see the demo today, a very straightforward experience. And many of you have worked on an Avid or Adobe before. Just imagine the Adobe or the Avid you're working on is somewhere in a distant location, and 10 times or 100 times more secure than the computer sitting on your desktop with the content. So that's sort of the framework that we use to launch Bebop with and get to the next level.
Thanks, Bruce.
That's great. Before we dive into the live demo, I want to ask one more question to the audience, and that is, when are you looking to refresh your post-production suites? Is this something you're looking to do immediately, as soon as possible? Are you looking at this in the next 6 months, or maybe within a year, or it's over a year away? If you're not sure, that's okay too. We've got an option for, if you're not sure, just let us know. So I'll keep the poll open for another 30 seconds. We're just looking to know when you're looking to refresh your post-production suites. Looks like a lot of the audience just isn't sure. And I think that's kind of common in the industry with what I've seen is, people are starting to explore these new alternatives, but they're not sure about when to implement them. But that's okay, because we're here to inform you on what's available. So it looks like most people voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So thanks for participating, and I'll turn it back to Ben.
Before we jump in, I was just going to add, if you are not sure, the reason Bebop takes credit cards is so you can dip your toe into the water and experiment. So Base and Bebop are happy to help you explore. And the wonderful thing about not having to write a big Capex check is you can see if it works for you and have parallel hybrid solutions where you can have a hardware solution on the ground, and Bebop and Base can mirror those drives to the cloud, and you can have a baby transition that doesn't create a ton of chaos. So I think everybody is taking a wait and see attitude because this is such a huge sea change in work process.
Definitely. And what we're going to do today is just give you a real kind of whistle-stop tour of the platform, but we're not going to show you everything because it is something we'd like to spend time explaining and going through in more technical detail. Also, if anyone is interested in doing a sign-up demo or trial, then do get in touch afterwards and we can go into more detail. So Christy, if we could switch over to Damon's screen, he's going to run us through a platform overview. Thanks.
You got it. Damon, are you ready?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Hi guys, thanks a lot for joining. Yeah, so this will be, as Ben said, a whistle-stop tour. Over the next 7 minutes, I'll just give you a brief overview of the Bebop remote desktop solution. So what we've got here is this is your first point of call with Bebop. This is your Bebop dashboard. It's accessible via any web browser, and it's your admin portal that will give you access to monitor your workstations and get your journey started. So let's take a scenario of you've had a new editor that's just joined you. They've turned up on Monday morning and they're freelance editor. You just need to get them onto the system. You can jump in here and just with only their email address and creating them a password, set them up with a standard edit user, for example, that will allow them to get access to see your content and to work with the tools of choice. So for example, here, if we set up a user, we can jump across, log into the exact same portal with the user credentials you've just created. Select the organization you work with, which I'll talk about shortly, because as a freelance editor, I could be working for multiple companies, still using the Bebop solution, but without any cross-pollination between the two companies. For your first time, you want to log in, and as Bruce already mentioned, the 0 clients, the hardware clients, but I'll be demoing the software client. So from this dashboard, you're able to download the software client for either Windows or Mac. I'll be showing you the Mac version today, but there really is no difference. You can download and install it, and we've got it here, and it's your window in to be able to access your workstation. So here, for example, I've just selected that I'm going to work for the organization Base Media Cloud. In here, I've got 2 different pods that I can work in. Now, a pod, for example, could be used to distinguish between different departments within your organization, or it could even be to distinguish between different productions, which could be important when later. We track all usage on the platform, and I'll show you a bit later if there's time, that you can monitor that and actually attribute the exact cost of the workstations to that production if you keep everything within a pod. Within here as well, we've got, as you can see, I've got 7 different workstations. Now, the grey ones don't actually exist. They're a representation of what could be there. And when they're in this grey state, there's absolutely no cost for them because they're not running. But if you click on one, within 45 seconds, you'll get a machine started like this green one that I've got here on the right. And then you're good to go. So yeah, 45 seconds is about the same time as starting up a local workstation anyway, except here you can spin up, I've got 7 in this pod, but there's almost no limit as to how many you can have. Now, just to take you through the workflow that kind of Bruce alluded to of you're working remotely, you might want to get your content in. It could be on your local laptop or on an attached hard drive. So here you can select a project that you want to upload it to, and these effectively are high-performance Zadara volumes. So you select the project you want to upload to, you select the folders or files from your local machine, or your SAN, whatever your machine's got access to, and you can throw it up very quickly, either using a Bebop uploader that's much faster than a standard FTP upload, or with an embedded Aspira uploader that's, again, many times faster and will take advantage of the connection speed you've got. What that will do is it will throw it up to that Zadara Storage. I'll just jump across actually to the Bebop workstation. It will throw it onto your shared storage where you can see in a time and date stamp folder the clip that you've uploaded, and you can work with it directly from this volume, or you can move it into whatever folder structure you want to work with. Now, when you first log in, when you start up that workstation, you'll be presented with this desktop dashboard. And what's cool about this, you can monitor how long the workstation's been running for. So you can see I have this running in the background while Ben was talking. Also, I'm working on a Mac keyboard, so I don't want to have to change my keyboard shortcuts or anything. I want to work the way that I'm used to working, so I can toggle between Mac and PC key mapping, so I can use Control and Command interchangeably, however I like. But I can also choose to mount or unmount my Zadara volumes. This is useful because it might be that I've got a volume that's shared amongst everyone in my organization because it's got all my bugs or common sound files that everyone needs access to. But also it could be that you want to split out volumes per production. And that might be because, as Bruce was saying before, it might be a really political production where only a select number of editors and producers are allowed to see that content. So you can limit their access to only very specific volumes, and then other users can't access that. So it's a way of organizing your content, but also making sure that it's secure and only shared with those that need access to it. Also here we've got our app launcher, so effectively we can pin your most common applications. So from the poll today, everyone, the majority of people were working with Avid, so I'll be demoing Avid Media Composer. But here you can launch Avid, and it's just, again, a standard install of Avid. And from here, you just work the way you're used to. So as Ben said, there's no proprietary kind of web-based editor that you have to use. You can work with the professional applications you're used to working with. So here I've got some content that's been ingested as DNX 120, and I've also got some ProRes 180 that's been AMA linked. Now, over this webinar, you're not going to get to see the full quality, but as Ben said, there's an opportunity for you guys to trial this solution, actually see for yourself that it performs just as well as if the workstation was local. So I can drag around, I can play. I'm not sure if you'll hear the audio here, but just edit as normal. There really is no difference. And what's great as well about this platform is not only can you work with the applications that you want to, but you can also start in, let's say, Avid, for example, and do your edit there. You can then move across and create some 3D assets in a 3D application, and then you can composite it in your favorite compositing application and do everything in this one environment, and you're not limited to one application. And then look, afterwards, for example, if we come back to the Bebop dashboard that I was showing you before, if you want to take a look and see how much workstation hours you've been using and track the costs per your productions, is saying we've got an organization here selected, and I wanted to see the actual costs across these 3 different pods or your 3 different productions or departments, however you've chosen to organize it. And you can set a date range where you can have a look and see who's logged in, how long they've used it for, and look at cost reports and really get granular details down to the second to see and track your usage. And this is really one of the benefits of the cloud. We know absolutely everything. We've had it where customers, for example, have had a massive multi-million-pound system that they've had to just divide by 20 because they've got 20 different productions using it, and some might only be using it a small amount and have a very tiny budget, and other productions might have a bigger budget and are using it really, really heavily. Well, with this, you can attribute the exact usage of that production to but using these statistics here that you can download in CSV format too. And on top of that, one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is the entire platform is supported 24/7. So from here, you can raise a support ticket, and a member of our team will be able to help you out. But again, power of the cloud. If any workstation was to fail for whatever reason, not that it happens, but you can spin up another one in just 45 seconds. And if you compare that to how you do that today, it could be a couple of days of scrambling to get a rental machine reset up within your post facility, or running and doing a last-minute deal with a post house to get that suite. Whereas here, everything's deployed highly availably. So this dashboard will continue to run and be accessible globally. And your workstations, you can spin up another, whether it's our standard one that can handle multiple streams of HD content, or even if you're working with more powerful 3D applications, a much more powerful machine with more graphics cards. So that's me done. I'm running out of time. So thanks very much for watching. I'll hand back over to Ben.
Thanks, Damon. We are coming to the end of the session, so I am just going to run through a few kind of conclusive points, and I'm not sure if you can see my screen. If Christy could switch me back to the broadcaster, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Okay, so really we've covered off quite a lot of information in here, and I would love it if people can get in touch if they'd like to find out more, but a couple of key points. So firstly, we talked around putting your data into the cloud to make it more secure, and kind of having the double up of disaster recovery and archiving included in the solution. Damon talked about being able to map your costs against particular productions and actually do a true pay-per-use model. I think that's really, really important. And Bruce talked through the case study of an editor working from home and not having to go into the office. I really think this idea of global collaboration and being able to work everywhere is going to be a massive, massive game changer. And then as per the discussion with the attendees today around kit refresh and looking at options when you want to update your edit suites, looking to outsource the technology has benefits in terms of bundled in power, cooling, support, specialist expertise as well. So it's not just like you're buying a piece of hardware and getting left to deal with it on your own. But most importantly, when you move to a cloud, you can actually concentrate on making great content. If you would like to get in touch with us, we've got global offices, as Bruce mentioned. The UK and European team is run by Damon and myself, and you can see our details on the screen. And for global sales and for US sales, you can see the Bebop technology number and email address on the right-hand side. Christy, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. We do have a couple questions. I know we're at 45 minutes here, so if people need to drop off, that's okay. We'll be sending a follow-up email with some of this information. But one of the questions, and I think this came in when Bruce was introduced and speaking about Bebop technology and being in the cloud allows people to access these tools remotely, which is awesome. But someone's wondering, is it really possible to edit the high-res media in the cloud? They say that they think that the internet couldn't handle this kind of thing. Do you guys want to touch on that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, I can take that, and Damon and Ben can jump in. So, great question, and it is a little counterintuitive, so thank you for asking that question. We're all trained that the high resolution requires a whole bunch of bandwidth to move those files. And I just want to harken back to one of my earlier comments about the way that we do that compression. What we're really doing is streaming an image, and of course, Netflix can stream really great looking pictures over really small bandwidth. So that's part of the trick. The streaming is a big part of the trick. But we certainly are using, as I mentioned, 4K files, very powerful computers in the cloud, and then streaming it over a 1080p line that's using probably a dozen different compression schemes to fit over that 20 megabit stable line. But let me just reassure you that when you have the Bebop experience, you'll be blown away. We can roll a multi-monitor or a single monitor over, as I said, a stable 20, 25 megabit line, and you will have an amazing picture that is absolutely in line with what you're used to cutting out on your hardware system. So that's one of the things that was a must-have for us in the production side. Everybody at Bebop is a production and post-production person. We certainly have software developers, but all of us care a ton about the picture, not just the ones and zeros.
Great. There's another question. This one's about security. I know, Bruce, you touched on this quite a bit, but someone, this comes up quite a bit, is the concern of security in the cloud. I know we provide isolated resources, which means, you have your own drives, cores, and software licenses, but maybe Bruce or Ben, one of you could dive into the security and encryption again, just to refresh.
Yeah, I can take this. It's Ben, yeah. So, yeah, I think you'd summarized it well, Bruce, earlier, but crucially, it's about the entire route of the media from the user on their computer all the way through to the disks in the cloud being private, controlled, and point-to-point and dedicated. And people don't realize that when they think about cloud. They think it's just a big pool that everyone shares. In this architecture, when you log in and you're editing, only you on your authenticated machine can actually see that stream, and it's encrypted. The storage itself is dedicated and ring-fenced to you, the software license, the workstation, everything. So it is a true kind of point-to-point solution, and that's how the security works.
Great. The other one, this one probably for Bruce. I understand how I will never run out of storage in the cloud, but how would I never run out of Bebop edit suites?
That's a great question. The reason why you'll never run out of Bebop edit suites, and I won't say never, but it's a pretty huge number, is because the Amazons and the Microsofts and the IBMs of the world have invested tens of millions of dollars into disparate components that make up what we consider a regular computer. So Bebop utilizes, for the most part, the GPU. part of the infrastructure at the public clouds. And I'll give you just a quick view into that. The GPUs, most of them come from NVIDIA, some from AMD. And the GPUs investment by Amazon alone was above $80 million. So Bebop is going to be able to facilitate expansion of Bebop platforms across every one of the major studios, every one of the major broadcasters, and we'll be able to do that globally before we come close to running out of resources at Amazon. I would say that for the Amazons and the IBMs of the world and the Microsofts of the world, media and entertainment represents a very small component of the overall pie in the global business market for cloud technology expansion. So I think the reality for Bebop is we're super excited by the idea of being able to take a Discovery Channel or an ABC as an example or an illustration and be able to take them from having 5 workstations and 20 physical AVIDs to 100 workstations and 500 physical AVIDs in a week. And it's that flexibility without having to write a big check that is so remarkable about the business model.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the next question. Curious about the difference of OpEx and Capex. And so do they have the same problem that they would have with traditional Capex and edit suites, that the products they're running on are old and obsolete? And just so the audience is aware, your storage, compute, software, all that's upgraded non-disruptively in the background. You're always on updated state-of-the-art equipment. It's a fully managed SaaS platform. So between all of us, we take responsibility for the support, monitoring, and upgrades. So you're always running on updated equipment. So good question there. I don't know if either of you want to add to that. That was pretty high level.
Ben, you want to?
Yeah, I think Christy summarized it really well. I mean, effectively, what you need to look at when you cost out a cloud solution is not just number of gigabytes or number of hours of usage. It's actually all the other ancillary stuff that you can save when you move. So think about physical footprint of your building, the rent per square foot, the staff costs of running and maintaining the equipment, and then all of the upgrades. And one of the crucial things here is that it's really hard to right size your environment before you commence a production year. I used in my post house, we used to have to put a finger in the wind and guess how many terabytes of storage we had to buy, and then hope we'd get the contracts. And actually, when you go this way, you don't have to worry about it. You get a project in, you order the capacity, you spin it up in a few seconds, and you just do the job. And when it's finished, you tear it down. And really, that's how we've all worked for decades. But now the technology matches the way that we work.
Great. And there's a kind of a more specific follow-up question to that. How is it charged? Is by hour or resources used? Maybe you can give an example of a cost per hour of standard softwares used. Either of you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in the UK European market at the moment, the hourly rates are around the kind of £8.50 mark for a full managed suite with the software deployed, and in US terms, it's around $10. And we've done the analysis with the current client base, and you're looking at around a 40% saving over traditional offline editing rental in a traditional market. So it's straight out of the box. It's a big saving. And then for more bespoke, larger scale deals, then there's whole conversations to be had around custom tailored solutions.
Great.
I think it's worth probably mentioning. I agree, Ben. I think it's probably worth mentioning for those of you that work at big companies. Many of you already have existing contracts with the Amazons and the Azures and the IBM softwares of the world. In those scenarios, Bebop and Base will work with you in a bring your own GPU model, and we'll decouple some of the technology, and we can work with you in that regard. The other thing I was going to add is we break up the price of the workstation from storage, and the storage we use, we're happy to say it's Zadara Storage. It's very, very separate, and it's in private cabinets, and we can isolate your content actually down to the spindle with Zadara, with our partner Zadara. and the cost of that content, again, is very competitive or below market. But the thing I want to make sure I stress that Ben mentioned, when you think about pricing for this stuff, of course it's going to be competitive, but remember, you're really eliminating a burden, and the burden is having to decide how many workstations you're going to need, what Capex you're going to write a check for. We really do believe that this is a very, very fungible model, and the ability to match the workstation load on a monthly or weekly or even daily basis, the workstation load to the actual billing, is a tremendously efficient model, which over a period of time not only kind of breaks down the boundaries for expansion, so you can have a company like a post company that can grow very quickly, but it also takes away what me running facilities for so years was a real challenge. When I would end up with a low period of work, when I had a ton of people working and then they would cut back over the summer, I had to lay people off because I had a ton of hardware costs. You won't have hardware costs. Your people will stay working and stay happy, and you won't have to lay people off because you won't have big giant hardware lease payments every month if you don't need the equipment.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, over provisioning becomes a non-issue in an OpEx model. So what we like to say is you simply can't get it wrong. So, you want to look at a certain amount of workstations one week, as Bruce was insinuating. You can change that the next day or the next week or the month. It aligns with your needs, essentially. We've got time for one last question that just came in. Once a production is on contract, do you charge over and above for the company contract? You ask for the company to contact you to ask for advice or technical guidelines?
We approach it on a kind of case-by-case basis. So because we're all from post-production backgrounds, and the way we approach our business is very much about speaking to clients, talking about their workflow, figuring out what works for them, there's a certain element of kind of consultation and post-production management that's bundled in with everything that we do, just by the nature of the company models and the ethos of the businesses. If a firm needs to do something very tailored to them and have a private cloud or integrate with other software, then we have a professional services arm in the US and the UK, and we do really large scale integration work for the client. So it really does depend on the use case, but absolutely we've got the people and the time to do those types of things for people. Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's all we've got time for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we hope to talk to you again soon. And again, if you have any questions, contact info is on the screen, info@base-mc.com or info@beboptechnology.com. Thanks again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.